have sister on streaming, being able to view from a distance. So, so we're glad that we could all be here together and spend a bit of time this afternoon remembering our dear friend. I think, on behalf of the institution, of course, I have the distinct honor and responsibility to acknowledge the incredibly immense contribution that Hank has brought to this institution over many, many years, and something that I can only imagine how deep that goes to you all as colleagues, to his students. I'm sure thousands have been touched by his life, by his work, his life, and his contribution in the classroom, outside of the classroom, in their professional work. And so we, if you will, in spirit, bring all of that into this room as we are together this afternoon to remember. Personally, I have to say, I'm a little bit envious of you all. I've been here 2 years, so I had a time with Hank, but I know from talking to many of you that you've had decades and had an ability to experience his special spirit that I was able to be a part of for a very short period of time. 2 years that I've been here, I remember Hank, when I first arrived, he was one of the very first to welcome me. And I think that would come as no surprise to you that know him. Incredibly warm, thoughtful, introduced me to the people I needed to be introduced to, that he knew I needed to be introduced to. Educated about the things that he knew I needed to be educated about. And of course, this would come as no surprise. And the reason I'm doing the sound, I think, is for the people at a distance, so I wanted to make sure. So I'll just project, which I knew I could, but it was going to be for the folks online. I wanted to say that you know, in my meeting Hank and working with him over this past couple of years, the wonderful thing is that he did for me what I'm sure he did for those thousands of students over all those years. As I said, he welcomed me, as I'm sure he did the students in the classroom. He educated me about the things I needed to be educated, and it would come as no surprise to you that he challenged me. He challenged me with the things that I needed to be challenged with. And so there are others here today that will be sharing stories to help us remember all of those aspects of Hank that need to be shared and brought into the room. And so without further ado, we'd like to begin this afternoon's discussions. I'm going to hand the mic, introduce and hand the microphone to the Vice President for Academic Affairs, Barbara Carlin, who is no stranger to any of you, and will take the event from here. But I also wanted to, we have a guest book that we would like you to sign. We decided not to set it up at the entrance because we were afraid it would slow down and have a creative line and so forth. So I'm going to start that passing around here, and if we can just move that, we'll have you sign that as well. So without further ado, Vice President Barbara Carlin.
Well, hi. I'm glad all of you were able to come, and I'm going to make my words short because these things are too sad for me. But my memories of Hank, I've known him for a very long time in a lot of capacities, and the overwhelming adjective that I came up with, that I've heard a number of you share, is sweet. He was just so kind and really, really sweet and funny, and you can see that in the picture there. That picture and the picture on this program, to me, just shows that the sweetness. It comes from his eyes. He twinkled. And sometimes, I mean, he pushed me a lot, and sometimes we disagreed, but he was always a gentleman, and always professional and kind. We'd go out to lunch. He always took me to Roy's. And he always talked about his family. and that's what our conversations were about. But he was just a kind gentleman. He was also incredibly passionate about Golden Gate University. It was, besides his family, it seemed, at least to me, his second love. And he was passionate about the students, he was passionate about his colleagues, he was passionate about the staff, and making sure that we did the best that he thought we could be and do. And he brought technical market analysis to Golden Gate as a program. And so I'd like to take my time to have it's the Technical Securities Analysts Association of San Francisco prepared a video in his honor. And I would like to have us share that now, because it really does represent a good deal of the academic contribution that he made to Golden Gate University and the community. And while this is getting set up, we should thank that organization for the flowers. Thank you for providing that to us. That was really kind and generous, and I know a lot of members are here to help celebrate Hank's life.
Dr. Henry O. Hank Pruden received his undergraduate degree from California State University in Chico, an MBA from the University of California, Berkeley, and his doctorate in marketing from the University of Oregon. Dr. Pruden started his career by teaching at the University of Texas in Austin before moving to San Francisco and Golden Gate University. Let the market decide, the 1970s. In 1976, Hank proposed to Golden Gate University Dean Al Zahn the first ever graduate-level technical analysis course. Dean Zahn said, "Let the market decide if this course is worthwhile." Hank taught this class using Gerald Appel's Winning Market Systems for a textbook. The market did decide, and the rest is history. The class filled a tremendous void and attracted many students from the local community. Golden Gate University officially became the first college in the United States to offer accredited courses in technical analysis. Hank was an early member of the Technical Securities Analysts Association of San Francisco, and in 1978 he became president. The TSAA is the oldest technical society in the United States and is a founding member of IFTA. Hank helped attract many notable speakers, such as Martin Pring and Joe Granville, to the monthly meetings and annual conferences. Hank has continued to be an integral part of the TSAA, and the organization has benefited greatly from his guidance over the years. Divide and Conquer, the 1980s. The technical analysis course at Golden Gate University became increasingly popular in the 1980s. Many prior students repeated the course and crowded out first-time students. Professor Pruden conquered this problem by dividing the course into basic and advanced. He experimented with a number of advanced topics such as time cycles, Elliott wave principle, volume analysis, and business cycles. Students were attracted to the courses from the San Francisco Bay Area investment and business communities. Several outstanding students became adjunct professors, including Joe Turner, Nolan Olhausen, Tom Larson, Bruce Frazier, and Wilfred George. Monthly TSAA lunch meetings at Khan's restaurant in San Francisco's Chinatown were filled to capacity. Some of the many memorable speakers included Justin Mamus, Michael Burke, Ian McAvity, and Robert Prechter. Bob Prechter drew a record crowd of over 400 to his August 1987 presentation. Hank and the TSAA strengthened their relationship with the Market Technicians Association, and a joint conference was held in Monterey entitled East Meets West and Beyond. Hank served as the editor of the MTA Journal for 11 years. In addition to teaching at Golden Gate, Hank traded for his own account from his office in Marin County. Wyckoff and institutionalization in the 1990s. In the 1990s, Hank became a full-time professor at Golden Gate, and a strong partnership was forged between the TSAA and GGU. Professor Pruden and one of his former students, Bruce Frazier, created and launched courses in the Wyckoff method at GGU. Several more outstanding students became adjunct professors at GGU, as well as leaders of the TSAA, including Gaddis Rose, Jim Forte, Brent Leonard, Vipul Sagar, Teresa Joyce, and Mark Farrell. Strides forward during the 1990s included a new course on behavioral finance. A graduate certificate in technical market analysis was offered, comprised of 5 courses. The first GGU technical analysis course taught online through the GGU Cyber Campus, and the formulation of course FI 358 that emphasized trader psychology and mental discipline. The Institute for Technical Market Analysis, ITMA, was founded by Hank at GGU, and he continues to serve as a director. Hank circled the globe with Tim Slater to speak for Dow Jones Telerate and appeared at seminars in Dubai, Beijing, Bombay, Singapore, Delhi, and Hong Kong, among others. Technical Analysis Ambassador in the New Millennium, the 2000s. Shortly after the 9/11 World Trade Center disaster in 2001, Hank traveled to Australia and was the keynote speaker at the ATAA annual conference. As IFTA's representative in the Americas, Hank traveled to Canada, Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil to speak on Wyckoff and behavioral finance and to help bolster technical analysis societies in various countries. In addition, he traveled to Malaysia and Singapore to conduct conferences and consult on technical analysis. During 2004-2005, Hank served IFTA as the IFTA roving ambassador in Europe. While on sabbatical leave from GGU and based in Paris, France, Hank's travels radiated out as far as Sweden, Egypt, and the United States, where he spoke at conferences and aided country societies with their technical analysis education. Upon returning to the U.S., Hank completed the writing of his book, The 3 Skills of Top Trading, published by John Wiley & Sons in 2007. The Electronic Age, 2010 and forward. In 2010, Hank received the MTA Educational Foundation's Mike Epstein Award. Hank continues to teach and often can be found promoting classes at conferences. With the assistance of Roman Bobomazov, the Golden Gate Technical Analysis Program is truly going global, offering students from all over the world the opportunity to participate in classes and receive a graduate degree in technical market analysis. Hank has the ongoing support of his wonderful family, lovely wife Sarah, 2 beautiful daughters, and 4 inquisitive grandchildren. Thank you, Hank, from your many, many grateful students, and for all your many contributions to technical analysis education worldwide.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Gordon Swartz. I'm the Dean of the Indiana School of Business. And people talk about Hank, and produce videos about Hank. One of the things that occurs to me is that the language of skills is heard as about his career, his professional relationships. Am I okay?
You have to hold the microphone closer, that's all.
Is this good?
Yeah.
So the breadth of his professional relationships and his impact as an academic pioneer and thinker and teacher. I only had the privilege of working with Hank and knowing Hank a short time. I know that through his work and his generosity, his grit, his humor, his determination, his spirit, his challenging nature, his role as a thinker, he had a profound impact on this university, on thousands of Golden Gate University students, and on his colleagues and friends in the GGU community, many of whom, as has already been noted, have worked alongside him for decades. There are so many facets to Hank's life that It's really impossible to capture that in the words of one person. Instead, I want to share some comments from colleagues and students. You might know that every student in every Golden Gate University class has an opportunity to evaluate their instructors. One of the evaluation questions asks, what would you say to a friend or a colleague taking this course at Golden Gate University? Here's what they say. Take advantage of learning from a world-renowned leader in technical analysis of the Wyckoff method. It was a great experience, a great instructor, fascinating. Take a prudent class. It's simple. If you want to make money, take this course. It's a business school. Take this class. What you can't tell from the way I'm reading these are the astounding number of exclamation points in these comments, including this one. This was a great class and an awesome professor. 3 exclamation points. You get the idea. Hank's students loved his classes. They loved being fascinated and awed and inspired, and all with a lot of humor. He also impressed and inspired his colleagues. Here are some of their comments. Professor Hank Pruden will be greatly missed. His scholarly achievements are well known. Even more remarkable were his professionalism, kindness, and warmth. Hank had such a wonderful, lively presence everywhere and at all times. My colleague of more than 24 years, Hank was lit up internally with the light of pure joie de vivre, and he could say that probably, and a true passion for helping our students. Hank's smiling, dapper presence always brightened my day. There's more. One of the nicest colleagues I have ever worked with over decades, pure in heart and spirit. And this one that I think really rings true across a lot of these. Hank was a wonderful colleague, a friend, a straight shooter, a source of wisdom and much laughter. Sorry. He was a rare gem of a person. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn and I, so my daughter Carolyn, are going to stand up there a little. Because, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can stay right there, by the bottom. Thank you all for honoring Hank and in such a big way. Special thanks to President Fife for providing this celebration, both for the GGU community and for Hank's friends from the world of finance. I especially want to mention John Fife, who couldn't be here today. John came to the hospital to support our family, and he continues to help me. Hank loved being part of GGU. He had some special faculty friends. I see many of you out there. But it was the staff that lit up his life here. He enjoyed hearing their stories, buying them treats, as well as providing that honey-baked ham for the holiday party. Kudos to the two C's, Cassandra and Carlos, for so willingly giving their expertise to support Hank's wide-ranging endeavors. Hank liked to dress the way he thought a faculty member should, complete with tie. But when he came to campus on Sundays, he liked the free parking, or was at home, he wore this. Now, you need to see how this is. It is a very stained, tattered, I would even say ratty, GGU facilities staff sweater, given to him by a favorite staff member. The video about Hank's life starts when he finished college, but getting there is Hank's real story. Everyone in this room, I expect, knows how hard Hank worked. That determination drove Hank to be the best he could be, not just for himself, but for his family, his colleagues, and his students. Hank grew up in Northern California, his mother a religious Catholic from Guatemala, and his father an irreverent former San Francisco bootlegger. They homesteaded what would become a small chicken ranch with no electricity or indoor plumbing. Besides helping his father on the ranch, at 13, Hank began selling eggs and produce to the people in the nearby woods, driving an old U.S. mail Jeep with only a handbrake over the hills. For 8 years, Hank took the school bus 5 miles to a local 3-room school, then later 30 miles to high school. Because he came from an area where almost no one stayed in school beyond 10th grade, Hank had to argue to be able to take academic classes. Now, he was not a stellar high school student. My daughter Carolyn, a high school English teacher herself, will read the letter Hank's parents received from the vice principal the spring of Hank's junior year.
April 22nd, 1953. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Pruden, as I indicated in my letter of April 7th, Henry's behavior has been unsatisfactory of late. Yesterday, he was sent to the library by his counselor after certain difficulties in his English class. He caused a disturbance in the library, and when cautioned by the librarian, was very rude in his attitude toward her. Such behavior cannot be tolerated, as I am sure you agree, and I am therefore forced to suspend Henry from this institution as of 3:35 p.m., April 22nd, until we can have a conference with you concerning him. Please let me know when I can expect you. Sincerely yours, Alfred M. Livingston, Vice Principal, Red Bluff High School.
After that conference, his father asked him if he wanted to drop out of high school and work in the mill. We all know Hank's answer. Hank's cool car, not the Jeep, and his job at a gas station to pay for that car led to his practically flunking out of junior college. At just 19, he decided to enlist in the Air Force for 4 years, hoping to fly. He ended up being a half an inch too short. But he worked in photo intelligence, developing the skills he would later use analyzing charts. The Air Force changed Hank's life. He didn't take 1 day of leave so he could be discharged early and move on. While serving, he completed 2 years of college. After that, he never stopped learning and pushing himself as a teacher and researcher up until the night he collapsed here at GGU. He didn't want to ever retire. Hank used to joke that he'd like to die at the blackboard, but he didn't want to traumatize his students. I believe he did not suffer. It was the kind of death he wanted, but it's hard on all of us. Thank you.
memories and thoughts. I invite anyone to come down with the microphones so they can be heard as well.
I appreciate what you said. I don't think Hank said that. I feel very fortunate. 2 weeks ago, I had a presentation I had to make here at GGU. I'm not here that often. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon when I finished, and I wanted to stop by and see Wadman Tarter, whose office was right next door to Hank's. As I walked down the hall, Hank saw me, and he waved me in. He said, "Mike, come on in." And I had a few minutes with him, not long enough, as it turns out. But I probably was one of the last people, because it was late in the afternoon that day, to get a chance to see Hank. I feel honored. He was in great spirits, told a joke, as he normally does, gave me a hard time about some of the things that I was bitching about, as he normally did, but he just had that jovial smile he never seemed to lose. So if anybody wonders what Hank's last moments were, they were full of joy, just like what he gave all of us. Thank you very much.
My name's Paul Fouts, and I used to be the dean of the School of Business, and as such I had the extraordinary privilege of working for Hank. You know, the sort of impish quality and twinkle in his eye is the thing that I will cherish and remember the most. And it was always lighthearted, always had a joke ready to pull out, make fun of anything, except when he got serious. And I don't know if you noticed, his whole body would change, his voice would change, he would become very professional all of a sudden when he was getting very serious. And being dean, I encountered that side of him from time to time. I remember the last year of my deanship, I was doing a review of all the faculty that were coming up in front of me for their annual contracts, talking about what they were going to do the next year. And so Hank came in, and he came in fearful that I might suggest he should reduce down his workload. And he came in loaded for bear. And I said, no, I was just concerned. I'm not going to force you to give up. One of the things that I had to do was to give him permission to spend money, because his budget for travel, as you could tell, Paris, Malaysia, Dubai, Stockholm, was beyond a faculty annual travel budget. Now, he was very good about going and getting support from IFTA, TSAA, and all the other organizations. And so that he would come in with, well, the trip's going to cost, and I've got them coming in with this, and if you can come in with this, only fair. Well, in exchange for that, I used to get these envelopes from him. And the one I remember most fondly was because what he would do is he would save the receipts from everything he did during a day, and he would then say, okay, this is your day, Paul, in Paris. And I would get the envelope of all the receipts mailed to me. Instead of postcards, he would send them. And so I had a coffee in a very nice little French bistro in the morning. I got to go to the Louvre, which was I was very fortunate of. And then when he took me out to eat, I think this was his sense of humor. He took me to McDonald's in Paris. I'm not going to really miss Hank because Hank is always going to be with me, as he's going to be with all of us. I'm just glad I had 21 or 2 years with him.
My name is Ralph Akinpora, and I can't remember when I first met Hank. I guess it was in the 80s. We were at some convention, technical convention. We sat around, we started talking about different things, and he was telling me that he was a teacher, and I said, well, so am I a teacher. He said, where? I said, New York City. Oh. So you teach Wyckoff? I said, no. Oh, okay. Well, this went on for a while, and as the years would go by, he and I would just kind of wink at each other, and when no one was looking, we gave each other the high five. Because for 40 years, is it 40 years that he was teaching you? Yeah, 4 decades, technical analysis. And I was doing it for 4 decades on the other side of the country. So he nicknamed us bookends. So Hank's a bookend, if you didn't know that. He took care of the West Coast, I took care of the East Coast, and we would always say, I don't know what's happening in the middle of this country, but we got the other sides going. I want to say one thing. Old technicians never die. They slip below the 200-day moving average and fade away. Hank, Sarah, is up in chart heaven. He's got the biggest smile on his face. Trust me.
Hello everyone, my name's Jim Forte, and I've had the good fortune to be first a student, and then a colleague, and then a friend of Hank's since the early 90s. I was working in the brokerage industry and had my first opportunity to come to take a course at GTU. And of course, I was already somewhat of an enthusiast of technical analysis before I started the courses, but having encountered Hank and the classroom experience, that just blossomed and expanded tremendously. I think Hank needs to be celebrated not only professionally, but personally. He helped to make me more than I ever thought I would be. He recognized me, supported me, and encouraged me, as he did with so many students who were inspired. And I think there's a Greek term called enthusiasm, and I'm half Greek, and that term resonates with him. He brought enthusiasm to everything he did, especially in the technical world that most of us know him from. And he inspired us all to want to become better technicians and to be inspired to follow the market and engage with the market. And he made it fun for all of us. He really did. In addition to the personal support that he gave me and most of us here to do what we did in our personal and professional lives, he, I think, contributed greatly to the professional status of Golden Gate University. Before I say a word or two about that, I'm going to say something a little more personal. You'll appreciate this. So, I'm hanging out with my wife, and we're engaging in something, and maybe we're having a disagreement or discussion about something. And she would say to me, "Would Hank Bruton behave like that?" would Hank Bruton talk like that? And she had me. I had nowhere to go. Okay, dear. I got you. Of course, she didn't know Hank the way I did. And Hank liked to have fun. And he emailed myself and Ken the night before, the night he passed, and we were going to have a meeting of our group known as the Maltese Falcons, a secret society who studied the secret going on of the market. And we never got to have that additional meeting that he was proposing. But in the professional contribution that he made to our field, and thank you, Ralph, for a luminary in his own right coming to acknowledge Hank and all of us here. Hank started a tradition of technical analysis in the academic tradition here at Golden Gate, which is fairly unique in the country, other than, I think, NYU was doing some technical analysis courses. And of course, technical analysis has had its ups and downs in the brokerage industry. And I think it's challenging now in the marketplace, especially with the digital world and what's happening there. I hope that Golden Gate University can find a way to build on the traditions and the legacy that Hank has brought to this university and the distinction that he has brought to this university in this arcane art and science known as technical analysis, to find a way to continue to develop it and find a way to prosper from it. Because we as a university and we as all as individuals have benefited and prospered greatly by his work. And I'll never be the same. I think none of us will be the same for having known him and being exposed to his wonderful spirit.
So I'm Lovely Charter, and I am a colleague of Hank's in the other part of his academic expertise. So all of you technical financial folks, Hank was an advocate, he was a pioneer, he was a luminary in that field. But lest we forget, he started out in the academic field of marketing, which is my area. And one of the reasons Hank and I were next to each other in our offices is because that was the little corner of marketing people in the School of Business. And so while Hank was in the finance department in Seminole in the technical financial program, he was also in the marketing department. And every year, when we talk about Hank's teaching, we would review everything, because Hank primarily in the last 10 years or so taught marketing management, which was the introductory course for graduate students in marketing. You teach it to MBA students, you teach it to people who are in the master's programs, and it's really, really important to get it right, because it's the place where you spark an enthusiasm and you set a course for discipline. And sometimes it's really hard to have a fresh perspective about it if you've been doing it for a while. But the good news about marketing is it changes all the time. And Hank made a point of bringing that freshness to the classroom. Not only through his own work, but by bringing in guest speakers, people who could talk about social media, who could talk about luxury marketing, who could talk about all sorts of things. And I really valued that. So Hank was a big spirit, a big mind, and a small body. And I admired and respected his intellectual capacity and his commitment to teaching. But the things that I think about now are what seem very small. But they're the things that make us very human. So Hank spent time at the University of Texas. Now I'm half Texan, my daddy's from Texas, and I can talk like the best from Texas. And Hank and I would occasionally have conversations about Texas because we had some political figures who had come from there and made an impact on the national scene. And Hank had great cowboy boots. And I must tell you that my family has very specific opinions about who has the right to wear cowboy boots. Are you a city cowboy? Because that doesn't count. Or are you a real cowboy? And I think, given Hank's background, that he qualifies as a real cowboy, which my cousin who runs a ranch on the border of New Mexico and Texas would have put a cousin George is about 6'6", I exaggerate not, and I would have loved to have George and Hank together. So Hank and I would trade stories about Texans, usually irreverent and occasionally not very nice, but we both felt we had the right because we were honorary Texans. We also had our moments in the academic administrivia. And there is some of that, it's so rare. But I remember a particularly trying period where I walked into Hank's office and said, Hank, I think it's time for you to be chair of the marketing department again. And he looked at me and he said, been there, done that, it's yours. And here I remain. And last but not least, you mentioned the joie de vivre of Hank. Well, one of the things that was just plain fun about Hank is he spoke in French and Spanish and very occasionally Italian, but mostly French and Spanish, quite eloquently, sometimes in passing, sometimes acerбically. Don't you feel really proud when you know that he's being acerbic in French? So when I think of Hank arriving at the pearly gates with his cowboy boots on, a chart in one hand, and some French phrase talking to God in St. Peter, that's then followed by something in Spanish accompanied by chocolate.
I know Professor Pruden as one of my professors, and lately he was my colleague. So how do I know Professor Pruden? I am not from the United States. I have immigrated here. I saw him on NDTV, the biggest news channel in India. What did he speak? I teach Wyckoff Method 1 in Golden Gate University. Okay. NDTV, Professor Pruden spoke. I'm a student of Golden Gate University. I need to find more information about Professor Hank Pruden. And I saw that he has published books. He has written tons of articles. Then I saw him in Geneva TV. What struck me is when he was speaking there, he had the big logo of Golden Gate University back on the screen. And the news correspondent was talking to him and he would flash Golden Gate University with so much pride. That was Professor Hank Pruden. And let me tell two other stories about him. This is how I knew him. And then as I was doing my doctoral dissertation, as other doctoral students know, it's a long journey and things happen. one of the person left my committee, and then Plodwin told that you should ask Professor Hank if he would join your committee. I thought, how on earth the big person will join me? And then he told Navanita, he used to call me Navita. Navita, send me the literature which shows that your stuff makes sense. That night I sat and I made it, and he told, I'm taking you. I have Professor Hank's prudent signature on my doctoral dissertation. That is something that I would always keep very close to my heart. And he called me to speak in his class, what Plodwin told, it was the LVMH case, the Louis Vuitton case in Japan. When I would teach that in his class, he would come to my room and tell me, you need to dress well. And obviously I like dressing well. And I researched luxury, and I would like, I'm taking this bag. Yeah, you carry the Louis Vuitton bag, you need to wear these shoes, and you need to dress up like this. And he would go over my slides and make sure everything is fine. I taught, I think, 3 times in his class. And then he would take me to Umbria to have some wine. He would take me to the Palace Hotel. I have all those pictures. And the memory is such that I was with Hank the day when President Pike spoke on the day of the orientation. We were laughing, we were talking. We were supposed to do we are working on a research paper, and we were supposed to do an experiment, and he was telling me, give the paper to President Pike. That was his last words. And next day, I got to know about it. But I love Hank, and Professor Hank and all his students who knew him wrote to me in LinkedIn when I put his picture there. These are the words of Vinod, his student, who was also a Technical Society Research Fellow. He has asked to give his condolences to the family, and also asked if there could be any scholarship in the name of Professor Rubin. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Kerry Curtis. I'm a professor emeritus here. This is the first time I get to meet President Fike. I met Hank the very first day I joined Golden Gate University in August of 1993. I had a career at Bank of America, and I decided I wanted to be an academic. So like the very first thing, like day 2, he takes me to lunch, and I give the mentor talk, which is things that I should do right, and things to avoid, and kind of a pep talk and kind of guidelines about how to be a professor. And from that point on, he was kind of my mentor and kind of a big brother, not in a height sense, but in the real sense of that. And I loved him. 2 things I remember about him. One was, in 1997, my wife was diagnosed with a serious illness. I was chair of the marketing department. And all of you who knew Hank knew that administrative work was not his favorite thing. So asking him to do something like that, to be chair of a department, was awful. But I asked him if he would be chair for a year while I kind of paid attention to my wife. And he agreed. And he did it. And so I was very grateful to him. So it shows how big of a heart he had, that he was willing to do something so not to his liking. And the other thing that I remember about Hank is, I use this as an example to my family when they remark on the untidiness of my office. And, mostly it's not outright comments, it's kind of like facial expressions. So I have, at home, I have a really messy study. And I said, well, being messy doesn't prevent you from being successful. And then I mentioned Hank, who was very messy and very successful. And I'm going to miss him very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Frazier, and I want to give voice to some people that have expressed their sense of loss and the importance that Hank has had to them that are halfway around the world. And as you can imagine, Hank put GGU on the international map. He traveled the world, and he really talked about technical analysis everywhere. And as was said earlier, GGU was always behind him in the background. GGU was always a very big part of his message. And he accomplished great things here. He did something in the creation of a graduate program at GGU that was unique in the world. And really the only other place that I know of that has the gravitas that Hank created here was what Ralph created in New York. And so they really were more than bookends. Now, Hank was a very important person because, well, first of all, he was brilliant in a most personal way. And there was a sort of a state of grace about him. And there's so many people that have written me recently and said, Hank changed my life. And people that have never met Hank, and they say, Hank changed my life. And he was somebody that didn't just teach concepts, he expressed how to be successful. And his metaphor was how to be successful in trading. And that was something that he did for 40 years, is that he was teaching people the entire concept, the entire structure. And he used trading as a metaphor for this, but it couldn't have been anything. People went on to have careers in many other areas after being touched by Hank and being very, very successful, and they'd say, Hank was very important in my success. I had a number of people in this room that said this today. Hank was an amazing guy. 36 years ago, I took my first class from Hank. And the family business was horse racing. And I took Hank's class, and I think it was the second class. And I said to myself, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I love this. It was like the second class. That's how infectious his teaching style was. And 30 years ago, this month, Hank asked me to take over his class here because he wanted to go on sabbatical for a period of time. And so I took over and I thought, God, you know, Hank is wonderful. It's like I get to teach this class, which I was pretty nervous about actually. And I didn't realize that Hank is the consummate marketer, because I think it was the third or fourth class, it was that very day of class that we had the 87 market crash. And I had like 30 people in class. It was a huge class. And I'm the whole time I'm just thinking these people are just like, they're sitting there in class and they're just like shell-shocked. And I'm like, Hank, what have you done to me? And so that was my trial by fire. So 30 years, with a few, timeouts along the way, I've been able to work for Hank, I've been able to teach with Hank, and I love being in the classroom with Hank as much 30 years later as I did that first and second night that I took classes with him. And he works in most mysterious ways. He was such a generous person. At the end of that first semester, he goes, oh, we're going to have a guest speaker and for the last class. And we're going to meet at this restaurant over on Market Street. And we're going to listen to this great speaker, and I'm buying the whole class dinner. And I'm like, who does that? It's like, who takes the whole class? The class was sold out. It was a full class. And so we go to class, we go to dinner, we have this marvelous speaker. Well, and like I said, Hank works in very mysterious ways, because a number of years later, that speaker who gave a riveting presentation, who's in the back of the room tonight, became my business partner. And Hank, you know, along the way, made sure that we just stayed, you know, he kept, you know, putting us into the same orbit. And the next thing you know, we're working together. And the other thing about Hank, there's just so many things we can talk about, is that the number of really amazing people that he brought into this university to speak and to be here and to meet students. I mean, people that are just really legends in their industries. In technical analysis, and Ralph is a perfect example of that. Here's Ralph here today. Ralph is, I would call you a legend, Ralph. And I'm glad you're here with us. I know you're very modest, but it was people, so many great people like Ralph that came here because Hank asked you to. And people that just really adored and loved Hank and wanted to be here and wanted to talk to his students. So anyway, I'm just going to read, I could go on, and so I don't want to do that. But what I want to do is I want to read two quick things to you. Sorry. This is an email that I received from halfway around the world, and I think that it expresses many emails that I have received recently after Hank's passing. Dear Mr. Fraser, it is with heavy heart that I read about the sad news of the passing of our beloved Dr. Pruden. It's unfortunate that we lost such a towering figure in our industry. To my misfortune, I never had a chance to meet the late professor. I only got to know him through his memorable writings and remarkable video presentations, and the words of a handful of acquaintances who were blessed enough to have met him in person. They all described him as both kind and humble, but without compromise to his stance on important matters. The latter is a fading character trait in our industry. In the midst of this heartbreak, let us remember how fortunate we all were to have crossed paths with such a generous soul. My thoughts and prayers go out to Dr. Pruden.